So, I tried to make this video yesterday, but it didn't work, so I'm going to retry it right now. So, what started with the movement of protesting to avenge the death of George Floyd at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department has morphed into I don't know anymore. First, it was justice for George, and then it morphed into defund the police. Then it morphed into destroy everything. Then it morphed into somehow everyone who's white and not black is somehow racist, or at least that's the general idea I'm getting. And now we've morphed into destruction and toppling statues and everything. So I have a question for you. Do any of you know who this guy is right here? If you said Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, you'd be correct. How about this guy? You can't really see him. Unfortunately, a little too. You would also be correct. So, history, since ignorance is now rampant throughout the United States, I'm going to educate you a little bit. So, the year is 1860. A man named Abraham Lincoln is running for president against his opponent, a man named Stephen A. Douglas, who is a Democrat's candidate. Lincoln is the first Republican to run. Prior to this, the Democrat and the Republican Party had been known as the Democrat-Republican Party. They split around 1855. The Democrat and the Republican split, making Lincoln a third-party candidate because you had the Whigs, you had the Democrats, and now you had Lincoln, who was a third-party candidate of the Republicans. Around this time, the argument over slavery was going on in the United States Senate and Congress. The South was afraid because the Republicans pushed for the abolition of slavery in the United States. The Democrats did not want this, and more specifically, the South did not want this because that is what their industry and their economy was based on. The North was industrial, the South was where cotton was king. So the election of 1860 happens. The Southern states begin threatening if Abraham Lincoln is elected as president, they are going to secede from the Union, and they are going to break away from the Union. As it stands, Abraham Lincoln is elected in 1860 by a narrow margin. He beats Stephen Douglas and becomes the 16th president of the United States. Shortly after this, South Carolina secedes from the Union, and 11 other states follow, forming the Confederate States of America. Jefferson Davis, a U.S. senator, also leaves and becomes president, the first and only president of the Confederate States of America, and they form their own government. Then you have what is known as the United States Civil War, or the war between the states. Here's what they're not going to tell you. Somewhere along the lines, the lie was perpetrated that the Democrat and the Republicans switched party and they switched bases on what they supported and what they believed in and what their platform was. That is not the case. The reason why the South became so conservative and the North became so liberal is because the people in the South, i.e. the freed slaves that became who became voters after the Civil War, became Republicans because the Republicans was the party that went and ended slavery. So the North and the Republicans end slavery. The Democrats then fight against the North and secede, all because they did not want to lose their source of income and slavery. That's not what they see. They don't teach you that. They teach you that the Democrats are the party of the minorities, the party of everything. They're not. They weren't ever, and they still aren't now. After the Civil War happened, the Ku Klux Klan was formed by the Southern Democrats, who were upset that they'd lost the war, and so they decided to create a terrorist organization called the Ku Klux Klan. Now, unfortunately, the Ku Klux Klan is now associated with quote-unquote Southern rednecks. I don't believe in that term, so I just use it because that's what it's formed with, is quote-unquote Southern rednecks. So ignorance is rampant because here we have people pulling down statues of people like Ulysses S. Grant, who was the supreme Union general who helped defeat the Confederacy and helped end slavery. He was then elected as the 18th president of the United States. But is the media going to tell you that? No, the media's not going to tell you that. They want to keep you ignorant. How about, see what else? They want to remove the statue of Abraham Lincoln. Why? Does anybody know who Abraham Lincoln is? Like I said, he's the man who passed the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863. And later in 1865, we just celebrated Juneteenth not too long ago. About a week ago, almost a week ago, we celebrated Juneteenth, which is where the slaves in Texas in 1865 realized that they'd finally been free. Oh, they've been free for 2 years. But did the Democrats in the South tell them that? No, they didn't. Have you ever heard of a man called Father Junipero Serra? They pulled down his statue up in, I believe, Northern California. For those of you who don't know who Father Junipero Serra is, he founded the first 9 Christian churches in California, and these are real Christian churches that preach the gospel, not just the Roman Catholic missions that we're familiar with. Because he had a real heart for the Mexican people who were still in California. This is before the United States took California from Mexico and California became a state in 1850. Yet ignorance has allowed these people to pull down this statue of a man they probably don't even know who he is, who worked with minorities, who had a heart for minorities. Why are we letting mobs tear down our history like this? This is ridiculous. What is the message we're trying to send now? See, the problem that we now face is that this protest movement, whatever it is, has changed forms so many times and its message so many times, I can't even keep track. What started as justice for George has now ended in pulling down statues, defunding and trying to get rid of the police, and violent anti-white movement, anti-conservative movement, anti-everything. If you're not for them, you're against them, and you're part of the problem, apparently. My question is this. Conservatives, why are we so afraid to speak up? What are we afraid of exactly? The First Amendment guarantees the freedom of speech of everyone, however, as long as somebody is not physically hurt. Now, hate speech is not allowed. I will agree with that the First Amendment does not protect hate speech. However, hate speech has become such a loose definition. What does that mean exactly? If you don't agree with something, why is that considered hate speech? If you're not actively trying to put somebody down and you're simply having a philosophical disagreement, that is not hate speech. So, what is hate speech exactly? I don't know what hate speech is because the definition keeps changing. I don't agree with the Democrat platform as a voter. Is that considered hate speech because I don't agree with that? No, that's called free speech. Here's the thing that I'm frustrated about. Free speech does not apply to just the protesters. Free speech doesn't apply to just the protesters. It applies to everybody. The problem is the message of the protests has been lost. Anarchists have now taken control of these protest movements. In the last 2 weeks, since the tragic death of George Floyd, what have we seen? We've seen Minneapolis dismantle their police department, and they want to put in crisis interventionists and community-based things because they don't think the police are there to take control, don't think the police should be allowed to take control of everything. Okay? Up in Seattle, they used the anti-police feeling to form an independent zone inside of the city of Seattle, violating both the U.S. Constitution and the sovereign territory of the state of Washington. Do you see what is happening? We are letting anarchists and destructive people hijack a movement for change. What have we changed in the last 2 weeks since all this stuff started? I haven't seen any positive change. No, I see people destroying property. Guess what? You do not get to destroy property just because you don't like it. I've had people arguing, well, if there's a statue of Hitler, would you allow that? No, you're right, I wouldn't. But if they put it up, I'm not going to go tear it down. What Hitler did was horrible. But if they put a statue of Hitler, I wouldn't just go rip it off. I'd go to the city council and say, get that out of here. That has no place in the United States. But no, see, people are taking the chaos that is going on throughout the United States, and specifically in the more Democrat-controlled cities and Democrat-controlled states, and they are using it as a license to destroy. Look at everywhere that's had looting and chaos and that the leaders have not intervened at all. They're all Democrat areas. Los Angeles, Gavin Newsom and Mayor Eric Garcetti have not intervened, despite the fact that Long Beach and Santa Monica had stores set on fire and burned and smashed in. Minneapolis, where there was chaos and destruction. Why? Because they got rid of their police department. New York, there's been chaos under Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo. And Andrew Cuomo had the gall to come out and say that destruction of statues is a healthy showing of anger. That's not a healthy showing of anger. That's people throwing a temper tantrum. They're not making any radical change. They're destroying property and using the fact that there's no law and order in these cities as carte blanche to just create havoc. And conservatives, why are we not speaking out against this? What are we afraid of? We know that that's wrong. Destruction of any property is wrong. What are we so afraid of speaking out for? What are we afraid of exactly? They tell us to be quiet. We don't have to be quiet. We don't have to agree with destruction and chaos and destruction of property and fighting. The police don't deserve to be abused. So what? We get rid of the police and then what happens? What do we do next? Christian church, I have a question for you. We're supposed to be the moral backbone of the country. Our founders believed in that. Our founders believed in morality. They may not have all been quote-unquote Christian, but they all believed in a higher power, and they all believed in a sense of morality when they founded the thing. If you look at both the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they mention a creator, they mention divine providence, they mention creation. You think that that's an accident? No. These men believed in some sort of to be a moral center inside the country. Yet we're not being a moral center. We're going with every which way, and every way the tide is going. The church, or the religious people, not just the Christian church, but any person who believes in morals, should be standing up and saying, no, you are wrong for destroying property. No, you are wrong for burning things. No, you are wrong for attacking the police. No, you are wrong for burning down business. No, you are wrong for keeping the people of a city hostage to your whims and your anarchist tendencies. Even the Black Lives Matter people recently came out and said that Antifa and all these other extremist groups have taken control of their movement and they're upset. Well, then why aren't they standing up to them as well? The problem is this movement is not going to be taken seriously because it's morphed into nothing but destruction and trying to erase history. Erasing history is not going to do anything. You can rip down all the statues you want, but guess what? You're not going to change anything. All you're doing is destroying property you have no right to destroy. Christians, why are we supporting this? I see a lot of Christians on Facebook support Black Lives are like that, but it seems to be becoming very, very militant in the sense of you're not with us, you're against us, and you are wrong. Where is the civil discourse that we're supposed to have? This tribalism, which is what we're becoming, this tribalism, it is what's destroying the country. This fear to speak out against what is wrong is what's destroying the country. Because city officials, where all these statues are being torn down, refuse to speak up, President Trump is now going to have to sign an executive order, though there are already laws on the books saying that anybody who destroys a statue will be fined and can face imprisonment. There are already laws that prevent this from happening, or they're supposed to prevent fined and can face imprisonment. There are already laws that prevent this from happening, or they're supposed to present and supposed to be enforced. But they haven't been because the Democrats want to use this movement that's going on to erase the history that they don't like. All those Confederate generals that everybody's against because they fought to keep slavery, those all came from the Democrat Party. The Confederate States of America was founded by the Democrats. The Republicans did not do that. The Republicans were the party that's fought against slavery, and then on top of it, they fought for civil rights in the 1960s. George Washington, there was a statue of George Washington that got pulled down recently. Why? Because Washington was a slave owner. Okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of education here. Yes, George Washington did own slaves. However, did you know that at the end of his life, right before he died, he freed all his slaves in his will, and he gave them the right to live in Mount Vernon, which is the property his family owned until it was sold off to the state of Virginia as a public landmark. Did you know that Washington freed his slaves right before his death? How about Thomas Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson is the other one that they want to attack, and they recently tear down his statue. They tear down his statue because he was also a slave owner. You're right, yeah. And unfortunately, he didn't free his slaves. However, slavery was never accepted by the founders on a moral ground. Every single one of the founders opposed slavery in some way. Washington, Adams, Madison, Jefferson, Benjamin Rush. You give me any of the founders, 99% of them did not agree with slavery during the founding of the country. The only reason why they did not end slavery the second the Revolutionary War ended was because they needed to keep the country unified. In 1788, 1787, during the Constitutional Convention, the question of slavery and abolition came up. The reason why the slaves were not freed at that time is because they had to make some sort of compromise because the southern states were already causing problems during the Constitutional Convention because they did not want to be unified with the rest of the country. All the states prior to the Constitutional Convention and the ratification of the United States Constitution act as independent countries with very little loose alliance. Make that thing, and because of that, unfortunately, the slaves were not freed during that time. However, the government never agreed with slavery as a whole. They always knew that eventually it was going to have to end, and it took the Republicans and Abraham Lincoln finally, nearly 100 years later, to finally push that. Once again, we don't teach history. They don't tell you that. So don't believe the narrative that our founders were all racist people who believed in equality for everyone but black people. I'm not excusing the times, but every one of the founders knew that slavery was wrong, but we didn't know how to tackle it. The Christian church was even divided over this prior to the Civil War. I'm reading a book. It's called The Civil War as a Theological Crisis. The church didn't even know how to handle this because you couldn't find any biblical backing on whether slavery was wrong or not. We should have stood up and said that slavery was wrong on a moral stance, but we didn't. And here we are now, hundreds of years later, and we're still fighting over the same stuff. I refuse to believe that the United States is inherently racist. If the United States was inherently racist, we never could have elected Barack Obama as the 44th president of the United States. I'm not saying there's not discrimination. Of course there is. But we have to rise above that. Obama did. Look at. I'm sure Obama was harassed at times for being a black man. Yet he rose to become a U.S. senator, and then he became a president. That's a historical thing. I wish he would have done more for race relations in the country, but unfortunately, he never really did. We are not inherently racist. I refuse to believe that, and we need to start learning our history. Tearing down these statues isn't going to change anything for us. It's not. We have done the best that we can do, and we are trying to tackle this. But tearing down statues and burning down buildings and violently assaulting the police and other people, and then shutting down discourse is not going to solve anything. This is a culture war. And these people tearing down statues and causing havoc, they are trying to shut us down. They are trying to fundamentally change this country for the worst. These are not social justice warriors. These are anarchists and thugs. They do not have the right to tell all of us how to live. Conservatives, we shouldn't be told how to live. That is not fair. They say that, oh, well, we force our views on them. No, we don't. I don't force my views on anyone. I tell you where I stand, and I tell you between right and wrong. Destroying things is wrong. Trying to erase history is wrong. You want to get rid of things, fine. But don't sign executive orders saying that we can't tear down property. And those Democrat officials should be enforcing the law, but they haven't. They're not enforcing the law, and I hope all people who are voters remember who it was that let the cities burn down. It wasn't the Republicans that let them burn down. Now, I've got my own issue with Republicans in the Senate because you're right. They haven't really taken a stance either on trying to stop all this. So, you know what? All of Congress is to blame. However, unfortunately, a lot of this is Democrat officials that have done this, not Republicans. California, Minnesota, New York. Atlanta is the only more conservative-leaning state that I know that's experienced violence, but that's because Rayshard Brooks took a police officer's taser and tried to use it on him, and so they had to kill him because he was a threat. Conservatives, please do not be afraid to stand up for what is right. We need to stand up for what's right. We live in this country too. Conservatives helped found the country. They were one half of the group that founded the country. So shutting down discourse is not going to work. We really want to accomplish things. We need to talk, and we cannot allow these more super extremists to have their way. Because what are we going to do when they, guess what? People who are supporting them right now, just because you're supporting them, you're still not radical enough for them. Eventually, they're going to come after you. They're going to come after anyone who doesn't agree 100% with them. I watched a video one time about this girl from a Eastern European country. She gave a speech. She said, at first they came for the artists, but I didn't speak up because I wasn't an artist. And then they came for the politicians, but I didn't speak out because I wasn't a politician. And then they came for the gays. They came for this group. They came for that group. And eventually they came for me, and there was no one else to speak up for me. Do not be afraid to oppose that which is wrong. We are letting ignorance and hatred destroy this country. We are letting people who don't know people in history destroy things. Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves. Ulysses S. Grant led the Union over to victory. Juniper Serra formed Christian missions. They tore down a statue of Winston Churchill who opposed Nazism. Over in England, they tore down a statue of Winston Churchill, and Churchill's the man who stood up to Hitler. They want to take down a statue of Abraham Lincoln. They took down a statue of Washington. Washington freed all his slaves. Jefferson helped end slavery. He didn't agree with slavery. It was against the law for him to release his slaves. None of our founders supported slavery, or very few of them, if any of them did. Learn your history. You want, I'll teach you history. I'm a history teacher. I've studied history intently. I have a degree in history. You really want to be educated? Let me know. I'll educate you and I'll tell you the truth. This is a war for the soul of the United States. If Americans don't start standing up against the more radical elements that want to burn down the whole system and impose their will on the rest of us, we're going to be in trouble if we don't stand up. This isn't a Democrat versus Republican thing anymore. This is a extremist radicals versus true patriotic Americans. Our country's done evil and our country's done good. Yeah, we eradicated groups, but we were also the ones who helped fight tyranny in Europe. We fought communism. We fought Nazism. We opposed the Soviet Union when they wanted to conquer all of Europe after World War II. We opposed the invasion of Korea during the Korean War. And now China. What is going on here? When did standing up for the right thing become such a crime? It shouldn't be a crime. So, Americans, Democrat, Republican, whatever, if you truly believe in the basis that this country was founded in, then please stand up and make your voice heard. Do not allow our officials to divide us anymore. Do not allow ignorance to hijack what we are. Our country was founded to be unique and to be exceptional. We are not supposed to be like everyone else, and the more radical elements that are tearing down and trying to burn down our system, want to make us like everyone else. We are not supposed to be like everyone else. We were founded to be unique on purpose. If the founders wanted us to be like Europe, they would have founded us like Europe. They would never have broken away from England. They never would have broken away from King George. So why 200 plus years later are we letting a group of people tell us how to live? I thought Americans prided themselves on their freedom. The British told us how to live. We kicked them out of the country. So why are we letting these people tell us how to live now? Why are we letting them burn down our whole system? That's not right. We shouldn't be letting people burn down our whole system. So you know what? If you truly believe that at heart that this country is good despite its flaws, like I do, then please don't be afraid to speak up. Don't let people shame you into silence. Freedom of speech works both ways. I'm using my freedom of speech right now, and thank you so much for hearing me out. I don't really have much else to say. If you want to refute me, fine. You think I'm wrong, fine. That's fine. I will accept your opinion. And I believe that you have the right to tell me that I'm wrong. So, you all have a wonderful day. This video got kind of long again. I hope it posts this time. You all have a good day. And if you want to have a dialogue, feel free. I'll engage with you if you want. So make sure you subscribe and share this. And you all have a wonderful day. Goodbye.